Welcome to the Whispering Tome. This is a place for stories that history forgot to tell, not the tales of emperors and conquests that fill the textbooks, not the battles and treaties that scholars debate, but the quieter stories, the human stories, the ones that happened in the spaces between the great events, stories of ordinary people who lived extraordinary lives, merchants who crossed impossible deserts, sailors who vanished into unknown seas. Craftsmen whose names we never learned but whose creations changed the world, pilgrims who walked 1,000 miles for faith, soldiers who fought in wars that no one remembers. These are the stories that whisper from the pages of old manuscripts, from the margins of ancient maps, from the ruins of forgotten cities. They have been waiting centuries to be heard, and now we are going to listen. What you are about to hear is the first episode of a new series called The Silk Road, a merchant's silent epic. This is not a documentary, this is not a lecture, this is a story. A narrative journey along the most legendary trade route in human history, seen through the eyes of a single merchant making his first crossing. We will walk with him through the burning sands of the Taklamakan Desert. We will climb with him over the frozen passes of the Pamir Mountains. We will rest with him in the caravanserais where strangers became brothers for a night. We will face bandits, sandstorms, sickness, and loneliness. And we will discover what it truly meant to be a traveler on the Silk Road 13 centuries ago. This series will unfold across 5 episodes, each one following a different stage of the journey. From departure to desert, from mountains to marketplace, and finally the long road home. But this is only the beginning. The Whispering Tome has many more stories to tell. Ancient mariners, lost explorers, forgotten kingdoms, the everyday heroes of ages past. If you want to hear those stories, stay with us. Subscribe and let the whispers of history speak to you. Now let us begin. In the 7th century, a Chinese diplomat stepped into this desert and wrote, "Before me lies no road, no trail, only the bones of the dead point the way." Taklamakan, the meaning of the name is disputed by scholars even today. Some say it comes from Old Uyghur, meaning place of ruins. Others claim it derives from Persian, meaning place of no return. But the locals, the people who have lived in its shadow for generations, say it simply, "Go in and you will not come out." This desert swallowed armies, it buried cities, it erased entire civilizations from the memory of mankind. Beneath its sands lie the ruins of kingdoms whose names we have forgotten, whose languages we can no longer read, whose gods we can no longer name. And yet, for over 1,000 years, men crossed it anyway. They crossed it for silk, for spices, for jade and gold and porcelain. They crossed it for profit, for glory, for faith, and sometimes for reasons they themselves did not fully understand. They crossed it because somewhere on the other side lay everything they had ever dreamed of. Every year, hundreds of caravans attempted the journey. Some never emerged. Their bones joined the countless others beneath the dunes, another layer in the desert's endless cemetery. But those who survived, those who made it through, they became the threads that stitched the world together. This is the story of one of those caravans, and the silent epic of an ordinary merchant who walked among them. His name was Tahir. He was 22 years old. He had never traveled more than a day's ride from his hometown. And like most heroes of history, he had no idea that he was about to become one. Kashgar sits at the edge of the known world. If you look at a map, you will find it at the western tip of what is now China, cradled in a valley where the Tian Shan Mountains meet the Pamirs. To the east stretches the Taklamakan, 800 miles of sand and death. To the west rise the highest peaks on earth, a wall of ice and stone that separates China from the kingdoms of Central Asia. And here, in the narrow gap between these two impossible barriers, sits this ancient city. Kashgar has been a crossroads for 3,000 years. Before the Silk Road had a name, before Rome knew that China existed, caravans were already passing through this valley. Every empire that rose in the east or the west eventually sent its merchants here. Persians and Greeks, Chinese and Indians, Arabs and Turks and Mongols. They came, they traded, they left their marks on the city's walls and streets and bloodlines. By the year 1253, Kashgar was a city of perhaps 15,000 souls. It was not large by the standards of the great capitals. Baghdad had 1 million people. Hangzhou, the Song dynasty's southern capital, had even more, but Kashgar's importance was never about size. It was about location. Every caravan heading west had to pass through Kashgar. Every caravan heading east had to stop here to rest and resupply before attempting the desert crossing. The city was a bottleneck, a funnel through which all the trade of the known world had to flow. And where trade flows, money follows. The Bazaar of Kashgar was legendary. It sprawled across the center of the city, a maze of covered alleys and open squares, of permanent shops and temporary stalls, of warehouses and workshops and tea houses. You could buy anything here: silk from Hangzhou so fine that a bolt of it could pass through a wedding ring, porcelain from Jingdezhen painted with dragons and phoenixes in cobalt blue, paper from Samarkand smooth and white and perfect for calligraphy, carpets from Bokhara, woven with patterns that told stories if you knew how to read them. You could buy spices from every corner of the world: pepper from the Malabar coast, cinnamon from Ceylon, cloves from the Spice Islands, saffron from Persia, ginger from China, cardamom from India. The air in the Spice Quarter was so thick with fragrance that newcomers sometimes grew dizzy and had to sit down. You could buy animals: horses from the Fergana Valley, legendary for their speed and endurance; Bactrian camels bred for the desert crossing, with humps that could store enough fat to survive 2 weeks without food; yaks from Tibet, shaggy and strong, able to carry heavy loads across mountain passes where no horse could walk. And you could buy information. In the tea houses around the bazaar, merchants shared news from every direction: which routes were safe and which were plagued by bandits, which cities were prospering and which had been struck by plague or war, which goods were in demand and which markets were glutted. This information was often more valuable than the goods themselves. A merchant who knew that Samarkand was desperate for paper could make 10 times the profit of one who did not. This was the world Tahir was born into. This was the world that shaped him. His father's name was Mahmud ibn Rashid, and he was a man who had seen too much. In his youth, Mahmud had been ambitious. He had dreamed of becoming one of the great merchants, the ones who owned entire caravans, who traded directly with the courts of emperors and sultans, who built mansions and endowed mosques and left their names carved in stone. He made his first journey at 19, a small venture, just 5 camels and 2 partners carrying a modest cargo of dried fruits and local textiles east to the Chinese garrison towns. The journey took 4 months. One of his partners died of dysentery in the desert. The other abandoned the venture halfway and turned back. But Mahmud pressed on alone, sold his goods for a decent profit, and returned to Kashgar with enough capital to expand his business. His second journey, 3 years later, was more ambitious. He joined a large caravan heading west to Samarkand and beyond, carrying silk and porcelain. The outward journey went smoothly. They reached Samarkand in 6 weeks, sold their goods at excellent prices, and prepared for the return trip. That was when everything went wrong. The caravan master decided to take a shortcut through a mountain pass that was usually closed in winter. He had heard from a local guide that the snows were light that year and the pass was clear. The guide was wrong. They were 3 days into the pass when the blizzard struck. For 48 hours they could not move. Men and animals huddled together in whatever shelter they could find, burning their own cargo for warmth. When the storm finally cleared, 1/3 of the camels were dead. 5 men had frozen to death in the night, and the path ahead was blocked by an avalanche 20 feet deep. They had to turn back, but turning back meant retracing their steps through territory they had already stripped of fodder and fuel. It meant another 3 days of travel before reaching any settlement. It meant slow starvation. Mahmud survived, barely. When he finally stumbled into a village on the other side of the mountains, he weighed 30 pounds less than when he had set out. His feet were black with frostbite. The village healer saved his life but could not save his left leg below the knee. He never spoke of what happened during those 3 days. He never told anyone what they had to do to survive. But sometimes, late at night, Tahir would hear his father crying out in his sleep, calling names that belonged to men who had not come home. Mahmud returned to Kashgar and never left again. He used what remained of his capital to buy a small stall in the bazaar. He married, he had children. He built a modest life, comfortable if not wealthy, safe if not exciting. And he swore that his son would never walk the Silk Road. Tahir was born in the spring of 1231, the year the Mongols completed their conquest of Persia. He was the second of 4 children, but the only son who survived infancy. His older brother had died of fever at 3 months. His younger brother lived only a week. This made Tahir precious beyond measure to his parents. It also made them fearful in ways that shaped everything about his childhood. His mother, Aisha, was a weaver's daughter. She was quiet and practical, with clever hands that could repair anything and a memory that never forgot a debt or a slight. She taught Tahir to read and write, to keep accounts, to judge the quality of cloth by touch alone. She also taught him the stories of their people, the old legends of heroes and demons, the histories of empires risen and fallen, the genealogies of families that stretched back generations. She died when Tahir was 12, carried off by a fever that swept through the city that summer. She was 34 years old. After her death, something changed in the household. Mahmud, always serious, became severe. He worked longer hours at the stall. He spoke less at home. He began to drink in the evenings, not enough to get drunk, but enough to blur the edges of his grief. And he became obsessed with keeping Tahir safe. He forbade his son from joining the other boys who played in the streets. He refused to let him accompany the local merchants on even short trading trips to nearby villages. When Tahir turned 16 and asked permission to apprentice with a caravan master, Mahmud's response was immediate and final. "No, never. The road took my leg and your mother took my heart. I will not let it take my son." Tahir obeyed. He was a dutiful son, raised to honor his father's wishes. But obedience did not kill the longing. Every day he watched the caravans pass through the bazaar. He studied the merchants who arrived from distant lands, their strange clothes and stranger accents, their eyes full of secrets and stories. He listened to their tales in the tea houses, memorizing every detail, the names of cities, the lengths of journeys, the dangers and wonders they had witnessed. At night, he dreamed of the road. He dreamed of dunes that stretched to the horizon, golden and endless under a burning sun. He dreamed of mountains so high that their peaks scraped the belly of heaven. He dreamed of cities he had never seen, with towers of blue tile and gardens where fountains sang. He dreamed of riding at the head of a caravan, master of his own fate, carrying treasures to the courts of kings. And every morning, he woke up in the same small room, in the same small house, in the same small corner of Kashgar. He began to wonder if the dreams would ever be anything more. The summer of 1253 was the hottest in living memory. The old men in the bazaar said they had never seen anything like it. The sun blazed from a sky that seemed bleached of color. The streets shimmered with heat. Dogs lay panting in whatever shade they could find. Even the camels, bred for the desert, seemed listless and weary. The wells outside the city walls dropped to levels that alarmed everyone. Farmers watched their crops wither despite desperate irrigation. The price of water in the bazaar doubled, then tripled. Fights broke out at the public fountains. And for Mahmud, the summer brought a different kind of drought. Business was bad. It had been declining for years, but this summer the decline accelerated into crisis. The Great Mongol Peace had opened the trade routes as never before, but it had also flooded them with competition. New merchants arrived every month from the east and west, hungry and aggressive, willing to cut prices to the bone. Mahmud's old customers were dying off or switching to younger suppliers. His old contacts in other cities were retiring or had already retired. The network of relationships that had sustained his business for 20 years was fraying thread by thread. One evening he sat in the courtyard of their home, doing the accounts by lamplight. Tahir watched from the doorway. His father's face looked old in the flickering light, older than his 52 years. The lines around his eyes had deepened. His beard, once black, was now mostly grey. "How bad is it?" Tahir asked. Mahmud did not look up. "Bad." "How bad?" A long pause, then, "If nothing changes, we will not survive the winter." Tahir felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What can we do?" Mahmud set down his pen. He rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with exhaustion. "There is a caravan leaving next month, heading to Samarkand. The caravan master is a man named Yusuf al-Khorasani. I knew his father. They traded together years ago before. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Yusuf is organizing a major expedition. 40 camels, 14 merchants, 6 guards, well-provisioned, well-protected. He has contracts waiting in Samarkand for silk and paper. The profit margins are excellent. Anyone who makes the journey will come back wealthy." Tahir's heart began to beat faster. He knew what was coming, and he did not dare to hope. Mahmud finally looked at his son. His eyes were red-rimmed, whether from the lamp smoke or from something else. "I cannot go," he said. "My leg, the journey would kill me, but someone must. Someone must carry our goods to Samarkand and bring back what we need to survive." He reached out and gripped Tahir's arm. His fingers were thin but still strong, the grip of a man who had once hauled cargo across 1,000 miles of wilderness. "It should be you." Tahir did not sleep that night or the next. He lay on his mat in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through every story he had ever heard about the Silk Road. The triumphs and the tragedies, the fortunes made and the lives lost, the wonders and the horrors. He thought about the desert, 800 miles of sand with nothing but a handful of oases to break the monotony of death, temperatures that could swing from scorching heat at noon to freezing cold at midnight, sandstorms that could bury a man in minutes, and always the thirst, the terrible, maddening thirst that drove men to drink the blood of their camels, to kill their companions for a mouthful of water, to wander off into the dunes chasing mirages until they collapsed and never rose again. He thought about the mountains, the Pamirs, the roof of the world, where the air was so thin that men gasped for breath and fires refused to burn, passes so narrow that a single misstep meant a fall of 1,000 feet, avalanches and rock slides, bandits who knew every hiding place, and the cold, the killing cold that had taken his father's leg and so many others' lives. He thought about the bandits. They were everywhere along the Silk Road despite the Mongol peace. Desperate men driven to robbery by poverty or greed, organized gangs who controlled entire stretches of territory, corrupt officials who demanded bribes at every checkpoint, and occasionally, far worse, armies on the march, raiders from the steppe, holy warriors who saw merchants as infidels to be plundered and killed. He thought about disease. the fevers that swept through caravans, killing half the travelers in a week, the food poisoning from spoiled provisions, the infections that turned small wounds into death sentences, the mysterious ailments of high altitude that made men's lungs fill with fluid until they drowned in their own bodies. He thought about all of this and he was afraid. But then he thought about his father's face in the lamplight, the weariness, the defeat, the slow crushing weight of failure that was grinding him down day by day. He thought about his sister Fatima, 14 years old, who would need a dowry in a few years if she was to marry well. Who would pay for that if the business collapsed? What would happen to her if they lost everything? He thought about his mother, dead these 10 years. What would she say if she could see him now? Would she tell him to stay safe, or would she tell him to be brave? He remembered something she had said to him once when he was very young. He had been afraid of the dark, afraid to sleep alone, and she had come to sit with him until he calmed down. "Fear is not your enemy," she had said, stroking his hair. "Fear is your friend. It tells you to be careful. It tells you to pay attention. But you must not let fear make your decisions for you. That is the only way it can hurt you." By the time the first grey light of dawn crept through his window, Tahir had made his choice. He found his father in the courtyard performing the morning prayers. He waited until Mahmud had finished, until he had rolled up his prayer mat and turned to face the new day. "I will go," Tahir said. Mahmud looked at him for a long moment. His face showed nothing. Then slowly he nodded. "I know," he said. "I knew the moment I asked you. May God protect you on the road." The next 4 weeks were the busiest of Tahir's life. Every day began before dawn and ended long after dark. There was so much to learn, so much to prepare, so much that could mean the difference between success and failure, between life and death. He spent hours with Yusuf al-Khorasani, the caravan master. Yusuf was 50 years old, with a face like cracked leather and eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. He had crossed the Taklamakan 17 times and lost only 2 caravans. That was considered an excellent record. Most caravan masters lost at least 1 in 10. Yusuf taught him the rhythms of desert travel, how to walk beside your camel, not behind it, to avoid the dust kicked up by its hooves. How to read the signs that warned of sandstorms, the strange stillness in the air, the copper tint at the horizon, the way animals grew restless and refused to eat. How to ration water, a cup in the morning, a cup at noon, a cup at night, no more, no matter how terrible the thirst. He taught him the protocols of caravan life, how to greet the master each morning with a report on your animals and goods. How to position yourself in the column, experienced merchants near the front, novices in the middle, the slowest and weakest at the rear. How to handle disputes quietly, privately, with the caravan master as final arbiter. And the golden rule that every merchant learned: your word is your bond. A man who broke his promises on the road would find himself abandoned at the next oasis. Tahir spent days in the bazaar buying supplies and learning which goods would sell best in Samarkand. He purchased 50 bolts of silk in various grades and colors, 20 bundles of fine paper from a Chinese merchant who was retiring, 10 pounds of tea carefully sealed against moisture, 2 dozen small lacquered boxes perfect for holding jewelry or keepsakes, and a few luxury items, jade pendants, painted fans, embroidered slippers for noble ladies. His father helped him pack. They worked together in the courtyard, wrapping each item in protective cloth, organizing the bundles by weight and fragility, calculating how to distribute the load between 2 camels. Mahmud's hands were steady, his instructions precise. He had not forgotten the skills of the road, even after 20 years. But Tahir noticed something else, a softening in his father's manner, a hint of something that might have been pride. And once, late at night, he walked past his father's room and heard what sounded like weeping. The day before departure, Mahmud gave him 2 gifts. The first was a small leather pouch containing 30 silver coins and a letter of credit. "Emergency money," he said. "The coins are for bribes. The letter is from a merchant in Samarkand named Abbas al-Farsi. He owes me a favor from many years ago. If you are in desperate trouble, go to him, he will help." The second gift was a knife. It was old but beautifully made, with a blade of Damascus steel and a handle of carved bone. Mahmud drew it from its sheath and held it up to the light. "This was my father's," he said. "He carried it across the Silk Road a dozen times. He gave it to me before my first journey. Now I give it to you." Tahir took the knife. It felt surprisingly light in his hand. The blade was still sharp after all these years. "I will bring it back," he said. Mahmud smiled. It was the first real smile Tahir had seen from him in months. "I know you will." The morning of departure dawned cool and clear. Tahir rose before the sun, dressed in his traveling clothes, and said the morning prayers with unusual fervor. He ate a small breakfast of bread and cheese, more out of duty than appetite. His stomach was tight with nerves. The gathering point was the eastern gate where the road to the Taklamakan began. By the time Tahir arrived, leading his 2 camels, the square was already crowded. Merchants and their families, servants loading last-minute supplies, vendors selling everything from dried fruit to good luck charms, children running between the camels, laughing and shouting. And everywhere the sound of farewells. Tahir had always known that departure day was emotional, but he had never understood how emotional until now. He saw wives clinging to husbands, tears streaming down their faces. He saw old men embracing their sons with a fierceness that spoke of unspoken fears. He saw children too young to understand crying simply because everyone else was crying. He looked around for his own family. His father was there, standing apart from the crowd, leaning on his cane. His sister Fatima stood beside him, her face pale and set. Tahir walked over to them. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Fatima threw her arms around him. "Come back," she whispered. "Promise me you will come back." "I promise," Tahir said. He held her tight, feeling how small she still was, how young. When he finally released her, her eyes were red, but she was not crying. She was stronger than she looked. Mahmud stepped forward. He reached out and straightened Tahir's collar, a gesture so ordinary and fatherly that it almost broke Tahir's composure. "Remember everything I taught you," Mahmud said. "Trust your instincts, take care of your animals, and when in doubt, follow the experienced men. They have survived for a reason." "I will." "And write to me when you reach Samarkand. Find a messenger heading east. Let me know you arrived safely." "I will." Mahmud nodded. He opened his mouth as if to say something more, then closed it. Then, without warning, he pulled Tahir into an embrace. His arms were thin but strong. His body trembled slightly. "Your mother would be proud of you," he whispered. "I am proud of you. Come home safe, my son, come home." When they parted, Tahir saw that his father was crying. He had never seen his father cry before. Not at his mother's funeral. Not even during the darkest nights of his remembered childhood. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that would capture everything he felt in that moment, but the words would not come. So he simply nodded, turned, and walked back to his camels. The caravan assembled at the gate in a long, chaotic line. 43 camels in total, laden with goods worth a fortune. 14 merchants ranging from first-time travelers like Tahir to grizzled veterans who had made the journey a dozen times. 6 guards, Mongol horsemen in leather armor, their bows unstrung but ready. A handful of servants and camel drivers. And at the head of the column, mounted on a white horse, Yusuf al-Khorasani. The caravan master raised his hand for silence. The crowd fell quiet. "We depart now," Yusuf announced, his voice carrying easily across the square. "We travel together, we protect each other, we share water, food and fire. What we carry is valuable, our lives are more valuable. Remember that and we will all return wealthy." He turned his horse toward the gate. "May God protect us, let us go." And with that, the caravan began to move. The camels lurched forward one by one, bells jingling, hooves thudding on the packed earth. The crowd parted to let them through. Voices called out blessings and farewells. Tahir walked beside his camels near the middle of the column. He could hear his heart pounding in his ears. His legs felt strange, as if they belonged to someone else. He passed through the eastern gate, under the ancient stone arch that had witnessed 10,000 departures before his. And then he was outside the walls. He looked back one last time. The city he had known all his life seemed suddenly small, a cluster of mud brick buildings huddled against the vast emptiness beyond. He could see the bazaar, the minarets, the familiar outline of the hills. And there, still standing at the gate, a tiny figure leaning on a cane. Tahir raised his hand. His father raised his cane in return. Then the column moved forward and Kashgar began to shrink behind him. The first day passed in a kind of dreamlike haze. The road east from Kashgar followed the foothills for the first several miles, passing through irrigated farmland. Tahir saw orchards of apricot and mulberry, their leaves dusty in the summer heat. He saw fields of wheat and cotton, tended by farmers who paused in their work to watch the caravan pass. He saw villages of mud brick houses, children running to the roadside to stare at the exotic procession. It was all familiar. He had seen this landscape from the walls of Kashgar many times, but walking through it was different. The perspective shifted. The world seemed larger, more real, more full of possibility. By noon, the farmland began to thin. The irrigation channels grew fewer. The fields gave way to scrubland, then to gravel plains dotted with tough desert shrubs. The caravan stopped for the midday rest. Tahir unloaded his camels and let them graze on the sparse vegetation. He ate a meal of bread and dried meat, forcing himself to chew slowly despite his lack of appetite. Yusuf had warned him, "Eat and drink at every opportunity, whether you feel like it or not." The desert would soon teach him the value of every calorie. Around him, the other merchants were doing the same. Some talked quietly among themselves. Others lay in the thin shade of their animals, trying to escape the worst of the heat. Tahir found himself next to a man he had not yet met, a young Chinese trader named Chen Wei. Chen Wei was perhaps 5 years older than Tahir, with a thin face and watchful eyes. He dealt in porcelain and paper, carrying goods from the workshops of Hangzhou to the markets of the West. "First journey?" Chen Wei asked. "Oh, yes." Chen Wei nodded. "You can always tell. The first-timers walk too fast in the morning and too slow in the afternoon. They drink too much water before noon and not enough after. They look at everything as if they have never seen the world before." "Is that bad?" "No, it is natural. Everyone does it. The road will teach you, if you survive long enough to learn." It was not a comforting thing to say, but there was no malice in it. Just the blunt honesty of a man who had seen the Silk Road claim many lives. "How many times have you made this journey?" Tahir asked. 6 times successfully. Once, he trailed off, his eyes growing distant for a moment. "Once not so successfully. I do not speak of that journey." Tahir wanted to ask more, but something in Chen Wei's expression told him that would be unwise. So he simply nodded and turned back to his meal. By late afternoon, the landscape had changed completely. The scrubland was gone. The last of the hills had flattened into nothingness. Before them stretched an endless expanse of gravel and sand, shimmering in the heat. And on the horizon, barely visible through the haze, rose the first dunes of the Taklamakan. The caravan made camp that evening at a small oasis called Yengisu, meaning new water in the local tongue. It was the last reliable water source before the desert proper, and the merchants treated it accordingly. Every water skin was filled to bursting. The camels were allowed to drink their fill, gulping down gallon after gallon until their bellies swelled. Tahir set up his simple camp near his animals, a sleeping mat, a small bag of personal belongings, his father's knife now strapped to his belt. The sun set in a blaze of orange and red, painting the western sky in colors that seemed almost unreal. Tahir stood at the edge of the oasis, watching the light fade, watching the first stars appear. Tomorrow they would enter the desert. He thought about everything that lay ahead, the sand and the heat and the endless miles, the mountains that rose beyond, higher than anything he had ever seen, the unknown cities waiting at the end of the road, the journey that would either make his fortune or end his life. He was terrified. But beneath the terror there was something else, something he had not expected. Excitement. For the first time in his life he was free, free of the walls of Kashgar, free of his father's fears, free of the small, safe life that had once seemed like a prison. Whatever happened next, he had taken the first step. He had crossed the threshold. He had chosen to face the unknown rather than spend his life wondering what might have been. And in that moment, standing at the edge of the great desert with the stars coming out overhead, Tahir felt something that he had never felt before. He felt alive. Tomorrow, the real journey would begin. And so ends the first chapter of our merchant's journey. Tahir stands at the edge of the Taklamakan, looking out at the sea of sand that will either make him or break him. Behind him, the safety of everything he has ever known. Ahead, 800 miles of desert, followed by the highest mountains on earth, followed by cities he has only dreamed of. Will he survive the crossing? What trials await him in the sand and the silence? Who will he become by the time he reaches the other side? Those answers lie in Episode 2, The Sea of Death. But before we continue this journey, I want to hear from you. The Whispering Tome is still young, and your voice matters more than you might think. So if you have a moment, I have a few questions. First, where are you listening from? What corner of the world has brought you to this story tonight? Whether you are in a bustling city or a quiet village, whether it is morning where you are or the middle of the night, I would love to know. Drop your location in the comments. Second, what brought you here? Was it the algorithm, a recommendation from a friend, a love of history, a fascination with the Silk Road, or something else entirely? Tell me how you found the Whispering Tome. Third, what do you want to hear next? After this Silk Road series concludes, where should we travel? What forgotten corners of history call to you? Viking traders in the rivers of Russia, Chinese admirals sailing to Africa, Roman merchants in India, the pilgrims of the medieval world. The stories are endless, and I want to tell the ones that matter most to you. And finally, what did you think of this episode? Was the pace right? Too slow, too fast? Were there moments that moved you, moments that lost you? Your feedback will shape how this series unfolds. Every comment, every suggestion, every critique helps me tell these stories better. Leave your thoughts below. And if this story resonated with you, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might appreciate a whisper from the past. The next episode is coming soon. Until then, take care of yourself. And remember, history is not just the story of kings and conquerors. It is the story of people like you and me, doing their best to survive, to thrive, to find meaning in an uncertain world. Their whispers are still echoing, all we have to do is listen. This has been the Whispering Tome. Thank you for walking this road with me.